Hey there, this is Manisha, and I'm back with a brand new season of Tell It Like It Is. Today I'm here to share the fascinating story of Mohit Oberoi, a professional rock climber. He represented India at the 1991 UIAA World Cup in Japan and at the 1993 Asian Cup in Singapore. He has served as the official coach to the Indian sport climbing team participating in the Asian Championship at Jakarta in 2000 and also as the chief instructor and chief course setter to the national climbers. Mohit's story is one of turning a passion into a profession, having the distinction of introducing artificial climbing walls to India. And that's not all. In the last decade, he turned his attention to the Ironman Challenge and open water swimming, competing professionally at the Ironman triathlons in South Africa, Abu Dhabi, Himalayan Rush, and in Taiwan. He has swum across the English Channel, but of course, and also at Goa and at West Bengal. Earlier, I asked him which of the three sports he enjoyed the most: climbing, swimming, or running.
I think it's climbing. I knew you were going to ask me this question.
In today's episode, we trace Mohit's initiation to rock climbing at an early stage, his love for the outdoors, pushing the limits of the body and the mind, drawing parallels between climbing and entrepreneurship, and the most rewarding of them all, inspiring young children to take up and pursue climbing, a sport that is now officially recognized at the Olympics. You remember George Mallory? Yes, the same man who set out to Mount Everest and went missing for 75 years. George Mallory had famously quipped to the New York Times when asked why he climbed mountains. Because they're there. To a desk jockey like me, Mohit is an adrenaline junkie. But of course I had to ask him my own version of why.
So I think when you are maybe 11, 12 at that age, we don't really understand how things, you get attracted to things, to be honest. I don't know, some people might be attracted to drugs, which is not the right path probably, as we know, and some would get addicted to sports. I got addicted to the outdoors. So one can't really say why you would want to do it, because it's something you just enjoyed. I think it was also a sense of freedom. When our classrooms are so claustrophobic, our schools are probably, I know, I'm just guessing, it's probably so regimented, but everything is that when you are outdoors, you're free. You're free to do what you want. You're free to decide what you want to do in terms of decisions. If the weather goes bad, you decide what happens. If you want to stay indoors, you do that. If you go out, so I think maybe it was a sense of freedom for me. To be under the blue sky or a stormy sky or whatever. And maybe that is probably what I feel now is probably what attracted me to the outside.
A lot of advice revolves around following one's passion. In Mohit's case, he pursued his passion and turned it into his life.
Manisha, I started climbing when I was in school, 11 or 12. I did a rock climbing course. And from there I basically got the outdoor bug. And I became really passionate about rock climbing specifically, not just mountains and hiking, but climbing rocks. And whether they were small or big or boulders, but that's kind of something I could do on almost weekly or everyday basis. My mind was always on it, that I really enjoyed doing it so much that I think I finally became the passion became my work and my livelihood. The late 80s, early 90s, we were rock climbing a lot. I was rock climbing full time. My parents were, of course, supporting me by providing shelter and food in the house. I was not really doing too much. Then when we went for a climbing competition, the sport climbing had just taken off in 1991, and the Indian Mountaineering Foundation decided to field a team of Indian climbers to go and climb in Japan for this World Cup competition in 91, and I was part of that team. We went there, but we experienced that we were practicing on rocks while this was an artificial climbing surface. And to do well on artificial climbing surfaces, we had to actually practice on artificial climbing surfaces. That was a realization one already knew, but when one went there, one decided, no, if I want to pursue this, I need to practice on that medium. Otherwise, it's not going. It's like a Formula One car, right? You need to drive that same car or similar car on that track. You can't be driving an off-road car on a Formula One track, similar sort of story. So when I wanted to pursue this sport, we decided that, and I went for another competition in 93 in Singapore for the Asian Cup. And that's when I said, look, if I want to take this forward, I need to have a climbing surface. And so I built my first climbing wall. My mother runs a school in Delhi. My parents do that. She started it. And she said, look, if you want to build a wall, why don't you do it in the school? Because then the children will also benefit from this. They will also benefit. They will get exposed to the school, plus sport, plus also you get to climb and practice. So this was, I think, a good trade-off. And we built the wall in the school. We had even a national competition that time. And once that happened and I started practicing, we started getting offers from, some inquiries from the army and paramilitary who also wanted to use this as a training tool, because we have a large number of people on the borders and who trained in high altitude warfare. And that's how my journey for building climbing walls started. I started building for others then. And I was not a trained engineer and things. So it was very interesting to sort of learn about engineering, about structures, about design. So, and then become an entrepreneur.
Wow. So describe a typical wall to me.
So climbing wall typically, so there are two kinds. One, so most of the walls in India are outdoors, because we don't have high enough indoor structures, because we don't have most of these places are warm and hot, or like most of the year, so they don't have air conditioning, unlike abroad where most of the structures are indoors. Indian climbing walls are generally outdoors because the weather is good. In summer you can climb in the evening. It'll be a structure which is typically 40 feet to 50 feet high, means 4 stories to 5 stories for a building. It'll consist of a fiberglass facade, like a panels, which are either supported on a supported structure, like a building wall existing, which is there, like an outside of a wall, or it'll be self-supported. So you have its own structure. If you've seen water tanks, they're structured on their own. And this climbing wall will have grips on it, like holes, which we call holes, with feet for hand and feet, which are interchangeable. You can change them from one position to the other. So you can increase the level of difficulty by adding more holes or bigger holes, so you make it easier. And you can take them down or rotate them around to make it harder. So even a beginner can climb on the same wall, typically, or even an expert. So it's like a swimming pool. Anyone can swim in the pool, right? You can have Olympic level guys swimming in the same pool, and you can have beginners doing this. So it's very similar. The climbing wall, why is it different to rock? People say we can just climb on rock. Is that you can change the difficulty. Rock, whatever stays. The holes remain the same. You don't chip holes, you don't break them, you don't alter the rock. While in a climbing wall, you can increase the level of difficulties as you please. So this is what it typically, and you have ropes system coming up. So you don't hold the ropes, but you are wearing a safety harness. So the rope is held by a partner, or now you have auto belay devices, which are automatically, belay means helping the person with the rope. Even if you fall, you just hang there in midair. You don't sort of hit the ground. So they're relatively very safe to climb on. And you can practice this a lot because it's a controlled environment. Weathers not really take a part in this. So, and you can do it more often than you would on a rock.
I asked Mohit if the sport was remunerated.
No, Manisha, absolutely not. You really can't because the sport being so small, we don't have industries in terms of climbing equipment manufacturers or other brands which support, unlike in Europe, which is also only the very top few climbers actually make some money. That also now they've started doing in the past 5 years because of social media. So they get hits on the YouTube or Instagram or Facebook is why the top climbers, even in Europe and America, get some sort of sponsorship or endorsements. And the competition climbing, there's hardly any money because being an Olympic sport, you just get a medal. But you don't have competitions where, World Cups, winner probably gets $8,000 to $10,000 which is not much at all, even less than that. In India, of course, very low scope of being a professional climber, where you actually make money off it. Unless you're doing something else, be an instructor or you're teaching someone, taking private classes.
At this point, I was totally hooked and had to know when rock climbing became recognized as a sport, how big the climbing community is in India, and how this is catching on.
So from climbing rocks, competition climbing came in. But then because of environmental damage and because they could not control the factors, it shifted to artificial climbing surfaces, like artificial climbing walls. And that's where the term became sport climbing. Of course, rock climbing is still there, but then it became sport climbing, which is now, after almost 30 years of recognized competition climbing, like World Cups and Asian Cups, it's now an Olympic sport. So in the summer 2020, we would have had it as a medal sport in the Tokyo Olympics. See, I think also compared to Europe, we don't have such a long history of rock climbing as such. We have a history of mountaineering. And of course, in the 50s and 40s, there were the breed of people who were going to try and climb high mountains. in Garhwal or in Nepal, or I go to the Everest. Everest by Indians was climbed in 1965, but there was a legacy of mountaineering, which people inherited. There's no legacy of rock climbing as such, because rock climbing was basically treated as training for mountaineering. So if you went to climb a mountain, you would find a piece of rock, you would practice enough or trained enough to climb that rock. But only for the sake of rock climbing, we don't have that kind of, unlike Europe, like I said, or in America, where it's been happening for almost 100 years or over a century now. So maybe that is one of the reasons where we don't have a very strong history of just rock climbers. When you don't have that base, and when you don't have a history, then I think that it takes a long time for it to evolve, like things to actually have more people climbing. And of course, then that also means there's less infrastructure, there's less knowledge, there's less following. We have pockets in South. We have pockets in South means Bangalore and around where there are lots of rocks. Then we have a pocket in Pune, Maharashtra area, in Calcutta, in Delhi. So I would say there'll be about 5,000 to maximum 10,000. Active climbers means climbers who climb at least once a month.
Shows like American Ninja Warriors have changed the face of the game and introduced so many new formats by combining parkour, gymnastics, and climbing to make for an exciting experience. If you haven't watched the show yet, imagine being 20 feet up and lunging to catch a hold at a 90-degree angle on a flat wall.
Yeah, that movement is called dynos. It's a dynamic movement. So the word dyno is a very climbing term, which is D-Y-N-O. It comes from dynamic movement. So you're actually lunging for something. And that also has happened a lot in the last few years, because it also creates a very interesting viewership. People enjoy seeing people jumping and failing or clutching onto the hole, which 15 years ago, there was much less of that in terms of competition climbing. It was more static and more controlled. Now, I think the TV viewerships bring this excitement to people. Oh my God, this guy's jumping for this hold, and he grabs it, and then he, jumps for the next hold or whatever. So it's now almost becoming, competition climbing is almost becoming parkour, gymnastic from climbing to what I used to do 15, 20 years ago. Maybe the sport evolves, sport changes. It's not remaining static. Why it doesn't remain static is because you can change the holds. It's not like gymnastic routines. Unlike gymnastics where you have a set routine, everyone does the same routine, right? Whoever does the best or does a harder move gets 4 points. Here, the routine changes all the time. That's what makes it very exciting. It's like a chess, vertical chess. So you not only have to plot the moves, but you have to physically do them.
Wow.
Even in Ninja Warrior, you have similar style obstacles. So I can actually build the same style obstacle in my house and do it. But when you go for a climbing competition, you can expect a completely different course. You never see the course. So what happens, Manisha, you don't watch the other people climb in the bouldering and the lead comp. I will never see you climb. So I don't know how it's done or how you're doing it. You are in an isolation. So I only come out when you've done your climbing. So I don't, because otherwise I'll have an advantage to see how you're climbing. If you found the right sequence, I would know how you're doing it. So I don't see that. The viewers see it. And then that makes it interesting, because if you are in the isolation zone and you hear a lot of loud cheering, you know that this person is reaching the top or he's closer to the top. Then you have to start making those calculations where the hard part is. There's all the nuances of competition climbing.
Wow.
So it's a chess problem, which is also physical.
What Mohit says is true. My 13-year-old nieces are training to be ninja warriors. If you're thinking of pursuing rock climbing or getting an artificial climbing wall installed on your property, then there are a few things you should know.
So what happens is, it's very important, Manisha, is a good question, is you need to have a user profile. Whenever we do any profiling to see what design of a climbing wall should be given to, because all of them are customized design. There's no set design for you, for like a set package. So you understand if the user profile is more beginner, intermediary, is it recreational? Is it people are just going to come and climb for physical activity? Are they going to do it for competitions? Are they going to use it for physical training? Or is it going to be for army training where they might even carry their own weapons and loads? And then you design the angles as per that. So intermediary or beginners will obviously have a much lower angle. Projections coming out will be much less than, say, at the advanced or the elite level climbers. So climbing walls also now have two other things which have got added. One is speed climbing, where the walls have now means last 10 years. The International Federation of Sport Climbing has defined speed climbing as having of a set pattern. So it's like a 100-meter track. It'll be straight. It'll have so many holes. It'll be holes at this angle. So two people can race against each other. Parallel. Wow. They're two parallel walls and they race up. Whoever gets to the top wins. So that's speed climbing. The world record is like 5.65 seconds for a 15-meter high wall, which is very, very quick.
That's insane.
So yeah. So you're climbing less than 6 seconds, you're going above a 15-meter high wall. And then you have bouldering, which is walls which are less than 15 feet high, which is less than about a floor of a building, where you don't have ropes, you have crash mats at the bottom. You just climb that and you jump off. And that is bouldering. So there are three aspects. One is the lead climbing, which are the bigger walls. Then you have speed climbing, and then you have boulders. So you design it according to what the user profile is.
Growing up in the 70s and 80s, Indian schools, with the exception of Sainik schools, other armed forces schools, and perhaps a few boarding schools set up by the erstwhile Nawabs or the British, did not pay too much attention to PE. As a parent now, I realize the importance of physical education at the school level. At the same time, I'm concerned about my child's safety. PE staff or the coach have a huge role to play in shaping young minds. Think Shah Rukh Khan in Chak De India.
In my experience, the last 25, 30 years of setting up in schools, the first war was in school in 1994, is that kids are very smart. They don't do these kind of things. They just don't climb up and get stuck. It doesn't happen. Touch wood, has not happened till now. So they know exactly how high to climb and when not to climb. That is something which school teachers and the staff and the management have to understand, that normally, kids are just quite smart on that. And so that is the first concern. And we need to overcome that first, with convince them that this is not something which is not as, I probably find that the julas and swings in some of these schools are probably more dangerous because they have sharp edges, or they have position in a way where the kids fall, they might break a part of the body. So that is probably the only thing which I think schools are getting scared of. And also they feel that they're not trained enough trained manpower to deal with this. But I feel that it's the PE staff who has to be really motivating. PE staff generally motivate the kids. You'll see whenever you're a good volleyball team, you'll find that the PE staff is a guy who's already, or a lady who's done national volleyball or at a higher level. So they inspire the kids to do the same. Like in our school, in the Air Force School in Delhi, we had Mr. Hari Dank, who had been on the second Everest expedition, Indian expedition to Everest in 1962. So he obviously wanted kids to go outdoors. He gave more importance to maybe sailing or mountaineering expeditions or rock climbing rather than, say, football or hockey, because he felt the outdoors is where the connection was. So I think the PE staff in schools have to get inspired. They have to go outdoors more to inspire the kids. Because I remember I taught for like just 1.5 years in a school. I was teaching geography, environmental awareness. It was great fun. It was a great time I had. And during that time, I took some of the kids out climbing or hiking. And I find that even after so many years, I find some of them are my climbing partners now. At least 4 or 5 of them took it quite seriously. And actually, I climbed with them in the last few years. So it is basically, I am not saying that I did anything different. It's just that I showed them the way at that age. And then they followed. Like someone did it to me, I guess.
Last year, Mohit attempted to scale the nose at El Capitan at Yosemite Valley in California. 3,000 feet of rock and a deadly drop. Considered the toughest climb in the world, Mohit was not successful in his maiden attempt. It is the captain after all.
We were trying the El Capitan, and then we failed on it. We got back to the campsite, and we met these 2 German guys who were ahead of us actually on the first day, and who also bailed out. Means they came down before us, and they were just distraught. And so I was like, yeah, we were sharing stories, and like, what happened? And I was like, yeah. So I said, man, we didn't do it. This is the first time. He said, oh, it's the first time you've come here to the valley, Yosemite Valley, and then he just laughed and said, yeah, what do you expect? It's the captain after all. So it's not like it's so easy that it's going to happen on the first try. So I think that's just stuck to me. I said, yeah, he's right. He's the captain. So El Capitan is when you enter the Yosemite Valley, you go through the tunnel, and then you see this massive rock on the left. Everyone says it's going to shock you and you're going to be like in awe. Of course, I've been to the Himalayas where you have very big cliffs, you have big mountains, 6,000 meter peaks, maybe 7,000 meter peaks. But, so one is, how big will it be, 3,000 feet? You know what I mean? I think it'll be something. But it is actually, I just stopped tracks. I asked the guy to stop the car, my friend who was driving. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to actually try and climb this? That thought only comes when you see it. Because I was warned so many times that we talked about it. But I never knew it was going to stun me so much. It's just rises vertically right from the valley floor. It's literally 10-minute walk from the road. So the access is so close that you can just walk there in 5-10 minutes. It's like an easy walk and you're at the base. And you have this 3,000-foot sheer cliff, which is coming out of the ground. Very, very impressive. I mean, like I said, I've been to the Himalayas where you have big mountains and people say, how much better, how much bigger would it be? But then when you see it is when you realize, and then you definitely are in awe of it. No doubt, no doubt. And also, the big thing is, Manisha, I was in awe of the people who climbed it first. The nose route was done in 1958. That is what the kind of respect I have after. It's not just the rock, it's the human endeavor and the kind of strength and mental toughness they used to climb this. In 1958, there were no ropes. There were ropes, but there were no harnesses. There were not that fancy gear we were using. Synthetic clothes and whatever else you want to call it. We have everything now. Climbing it now and climbing 1958 is a completely different thing. It's like climbing Everest now and it was done in 53. These people were wearing street clothes. And similarly, the Capitan was done in 50 years. It leaves you in awe, because when we were on it, we was like, my God, how is these guys climbing this in 60s with nothing with them? In fact, there's a crack called the stove leg crack. Mm-hmm. It's a crack line which goes about 400 feet. Why it's called stove leg is because they couldn't figure out a way to climb it. It was too wide for the equipment they had of that time. So this person, Warren Hardin, took out, he found the stove. The Primus stove has these legs on which it sort of sits. So it is made of metal. So he actually took that in Camp 4. He broke all those legs of the 10, 15 stoves they had and used to jam in the crack, like hammer that stove leg into the crack and climb some of the sections of the crack. So it was like quite crazy what they were doing. So they were not only just climbing, they were innovating equipment as they were doing this. Typically, 90% of the people do a multi-day ascent. So you're climbing to a ledge, or you have a portable ledge where you set up a ledge of nylon and it's called a porta ledge, which you carry yourself. We didn't have one. We were trying to hit the ledges. There are ledges at various points of the climb. So a typical ascent average speed is about 3 days, 4 days. The biggest issue is carrying not just your stove and food. You need to carry water, because there's no water on the route. So if you're going to spend 3 days, we were carrying 22 liters of water. So it translates to around 23, 24 kilos. And it's all sitting in a haul bag, what's called a haul bag, which you pull up, these mechanical pulley with your body weight. You need to haul the bag up. So once you climb up, the climber comes, the leader goes up, he anchors to the rock, and he sets up the rope for the haul bag to come up. And then you need to haul the bag, which can, in our case, weigh about 45 kilos. Because it feels like a pig, like it's just hanging dead weight. And of course, it gets lighter as you climb up, because when you're consuming the water, basically it's a lot of water inside, because there's no water in the middle. Of course, now the nose people climbing in a day, the record is 2 hours.
Insane.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't even want to, how it's done, people know. It's in 2 hours, of course, it's been done only once, but they just broke the record. So the nose, average party, like I said, a sensible party who can make it to the top is 3.5 days. So you sleep on the edges, you have poop. So you need to go to the toilet, you need to carry what's called the poop bags.
Yeah.
So you carry there's synthetic, basically a polythene bag with a liner in it. So you poop in that and you make a poop tube. So you get a plastic tube and you can't throw it off the cliff. Sorry, they're going into details. You can't throw it off the cliff because it land on people and the people down there and you can't spoil it. So you carry everything out. So not only are you carrying your food, but you're wearing your poop up also.
Quite a shitty experience, I would say.
Yeah, to carry the poop tube, yes, I'm sure. But overall, it's very interesting. See, it's a lot of learning. That's what I enjoy about this whole experience. Even if you climb otherwise, you're climbing across, which I've done across the world in Europe, in Australia, not Australia, Thailand or America. But the point is, this is completely the big walling, what's called big walling, big wall experience is different because it involves hauling people. It's like construction work. You're hauling stuff. You're putting ropes together. The climbing part becomes lesser, but you got to enjoy that whole experience of doing something new.
This is a test of human endurance, testing limits of physical and mental boundaries. And there are parallels to entrepreneurship.
When you're climbing, only climbing goes in your head. That's all you got to do. You have to focus on what you're doing. It's a very intense sport. So there's a lot of matter of safety involved because when you're climbing, as you go higher, the higher you go, the harder you fall, right? So you need to be very careful. I think, so when you're climbing, I'm focused on climbing. And unlike other sports like tennis or hockey or football, where, maximum if you lose a pass or you don't play very well, you stop, nothing really happens to you. While in climbing, if you miss a clip, supposing you're flipping onto the rope or you do a wrong knot or you're not paying attention, you could actually lose your life, or your partners could lose your life because you made a mistake. So I think the focus is very much on what you're doing at the moment. You have to be in the moment. Climbing has a special bond with your partners. You climb, you get inspired with the people who you climb with. It's part of the journey. So like someone said, what is more important, the journey or the destination? And I felt it was the companionship, who you actually did the journey with. About testing the limits, yes, it's always about what more you can do, but how you want to push yourself physically. It's also about learning. I think for me, it was also about learning completely a new sport. There's so many little things you start to learn about this when you start getting into it, whether it's open water swimming, whether it's going across a channel, there's a completely different learning happening. So I think apart from just physical pushing the limits, it was not learning a new thing, it was learning a new sport. I used to think about Ironman when I was climbing also. I used to think about it. I didn't think I would be doing it one day, but I used to have thoughts. I used to be fascinated with it. I never knew that I would actually take it up and do it. I think running a business is very, very similar, running or doing entrepreneurship and any of this, because I think I spoke to you earlier that you get any of these long endurance sport, whether it's a 100-mile run or you do a 20K swim, you get these dark moments, where things are very low. And something which everyone warns you, so you're going to have these dark moments where you're going to say, why am I here? What am I doing? Or whatever else you might think. You will be in a pain cave. You will be in pain. You will be wondering what is happening. Your sugar level drops and you're tired. But things will change soon, or sooner or later, depending when. But similar thing happen in work. I feel that you get these very low moments being an entrepreneur where you really think in a very helpless situation, and then so you endure through it. So that I think the sport teaches you that there are going to be there are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. That probably helps. So similar things in relationships, you're going to have the similar sort of experience where you know that, and also you need to put in work in all these, like you do it with any other sport. You need to put in work to make it happen. You cannot just show up on that day and say, hey, I'll see what happens. It's not going to happen. Similar thing in a relationship, you need to put time in it, and similar thing in work, you need to put prepared for it. You need to work on it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. This is what I believe in. If you're not prepared, it's not going to go. Because a lot of time people feel that, if I do this and it show up, it's going to happen. Unlikely. How is it going to happen? Chances are very low.
Word of advice for young climbers.
I think do not focus on just numbers and try to improve your grade, because a lot of it becomes nowadays is about how hard you climb. It's about enjoying the outdoor experiences, the outdoor lifestyle. Because end of the day, you could do competitions, you could do other stuff. You could be winning stuff. But if you enjoy being outside, automatically you'll spend more time, you're going to get better. So enjoy the whole experience, because I think for me, climbing is more like a lifestyle than just a sport. You live this whole lifestyle.
A life without risk, a life without real pain, a life without real joys. This is existing, not living, and that is Mohit's philosophy. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with a friend, else send it to a foe. And yes, do record your voice notes and send me feedback. That's it from me. This is Manisha Kadagathur signing off until next week.